The core relationship skill that I really like, literally, this would transform all of our lives today if we started to do it.
You're listening to the In Your Pants podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Susie Gronsky, your penis-friendly pelvic health physical therapist, sex counselor, and educator, helping you get in the know down below. Hi friends, Dr. Susie G here, and welcome to another In Your Pants podcast. On today's show, we are talking about men and dating, and why in a 2021 study that looked at loneliness around the world, the trends that they observed were that men were lonelier than women. We talk about what relationship skills that men might be struggling with that may make it difficult for them to connect with someone romantically, and what men can do to improve their dating game on dating apps. To help me talk about these topics, I have invited Dr. Greg Matos to the show. Dr. Greg Matos is a board-certified couple and family psychologist in Los Angeles, California. He is the founder of the charity A Better Love Project that helps people start healthier relationships from the beginning. Dr. Greg is a former Marine Corps sergeant and recipient of the Bronze Star with Combat Valor. I hope you enjoy the show. Dr. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Dr. Susie.
So we're going to be talking about loneliness, particularly in this one study that I know you've written about, a 2021 study that they observed loneliness was greater in younger men than in women, which was interesting. So I'm curious to hear what your opinion is on why this might be and what are some of the factors contributing to this gap.
Yeah, the gap that you're noting and that I talked about in my article on Psychology Today is really it's a skills gap, and there's no blame that has to go anywhere really about why we're in the skills gap other than just recognizing we are. And so if you're a younger man, by the way, I'm not a younger man anymore. I think I passed that point of my existence. I'm turning 40 in February. So I'm a middle-aged man. But if you are a younger man in today's world, you're facing a dating landscape that's drastically different than even, Dr. Susie, when you and I were dating, or whenever that was, or perhaps your audience members, maybe that was 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, Dr. Susie. Things were different. So the point of my article there was like, okay, we've got these younger men who are facing more loneliness. What's the deal? And answering that question, I came to a few conclusions, at least hypotheses and assertions based on spending many, many hours with my audience on TikTok. I have over 40,000 followers at A Better Love Project, and spent a lot of time with them, mostly middle-aged women who are single, telling me exactly about the skills they were looking for. And so, listen, I've got a cheat sheet for younger men and older men that I hope to share with you today on how we can just, learn how to share our experience in a way that's emotionally connecting, which is so key, especially for, I think, many of your listeners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Greg, because I'm glad you mentioned your Psychology Today piece on the rise of lonely single men. You received a lot of backlash from men on that piece. Why all the anger? And
yeah, I mean, when I stopped reading my emails coming in from Psychology Today for maybe a month, and then I went back to it. That was the advice that friends gave me, because I started receiving really nasty, kind of threatening messages from men. Mostly lonely and single men, which is not surprising because I was speaking hopefully to them to invite them out of their pain and suffering of feeling lonely, feeling sad, into a recognition that it's not forever if we can actually think of ourselves as growing and learning new ways of like loving on each other, especially whoever it is that we want to try to love on. Yeah, that's my thought. I don't know. Help me. We can continue that thought in some other way. That was it.
No, it was just interesting that that was the response from some men, obviously,
Yes.
and it struck a chord with them because it probably shook their own internal dialogue. Their internal voice was speaking, but it really was perhaps maybe more of a projection of what was going on for them and the frustrations that they were probably experiencing in this particular space and context. So
yeah, there was, one thing I'll just mention because I'm learning, Dr. Susie, as I venture into this public sphere of podcasts and whatever else, that there's a lot of suffering. I mean, there really are. I mean, there's a lot of so just think about dating these days. I don't know if your listeners are dating, what they're doing, but if you think about dating these days, and if you think about how we actually meet each other, like to jump on a dating app, if you're a heterosexual man right now listening to this, and you're single and you're trying to date and you're on a dating app, you're competing. You thought a competition was fierce in the past, gentlemen. Competition is a whole new level today, and it requires what we might call soft skills. I would call core relationship skills. Hopefully we can talk about today as well. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's a beautiful segue into the relationship skills. So what relationship skills are men struggling with that make it difficult for them to connect with someone romantically, whether that's on a dating app or otherwise?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking. I'm on TikTok like every day. I basically live stream on TikTok at abetterloveproject. And I was talking to some audience members yesterday about this, and I said, I really wish that more men would listen to me. And she said, I wish more men would listen, period. Right. And so let me jump off from that place and say the core relationship skill that I really like, literally, this would transform all of our lives today if we started to master the skill. And I recently wrote about it again on Psychology Today in another context, but the skill is this: listening to seek understanding and emotionally validate. Now, the first part, a lot of people get, and they probably do well. Like, they can communicate to their partner after their partner says they had a bad day, blah, blah, blah. They can say, oh, yeah, okay, sounds like you had a bad day. But to be able to emotionally validate is the key skill that all of us struggle with, but especially men, because as a guy who grew up in a traditional Portuguese home with very traditional gender roles and expectations, I could tell you it's not something we learn how to do when we're kids. And that's what it comes down to. It's like, how are we learning what relationships are in the first place, Dr. C? Like, that's, and how do we do it, and how do we go about it, and how do we feel connected? And if you want to have sex eventually, I think you talk about sex on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
If you want to have, okay, I think probably a while. Yeah. So if you want to have sex eventually and have immersive, beautiful, passionate sex, then you definitely want to just start from the very beginning with this emotional connection and validation stuff.
Yeah. So what are some practical strategies of demonstrating or modeling what that looks like?
Yeah, I think the best thing that anyone can do is start with a stress-reducing conversation, which comes from the Gottman method. Now, Doctors John and Julie Gottman have been married for over 35 years. Their legacy of love, Dr. Susan, you probably already know this, but their legacy of love will be their method that they taught me and thousands of other clinicians all around the world, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and States primarily, how to actually just connect on a daily basis in practical ways. The stress reducing conversation is exactly that. It's 3 questions. Can I go into it?
Oh,
all right.
Love you to.
Okay. The 3 questions. This is beautiful. So I would invite everyone who's listening to this right now, if they're in a relationship, think about doing this today. If they're thinking about getting in a relationship, just think about these are the things that I want to be curious about on a daily basis about my partner's internal world. And so these are the 3 questions. Sweetheart, and you can start with sweetheart, love, habibti, whatever the thing is. and look into their eyes and ask them, what was the most stressful part of your day today?
Mm-hmm.
And listen. After you hear them tell you what the most stressful part of the day is, ask them at least one clarifying question. Tell me more about that part. After you really understand, then tell them what you think you understand. Like, oh yeah, that sounds really stressful. Your boss, what they said. And then validate. Here's the emotion validation. And this is the cheat sheet. You literally just have to say these words, okay? Sweetheart, that makes sense to me. I get it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That you feel that way. Okay. That single thing, if you say that and mean it, because you can connect to it emotionally, because, oh, wow, it is stressful what my partners told me they had to deal with today with their boss.
Mm-hmm.
Then your validation of them will release all sorts of beautiful bonding neurochemicals and all sorts of other things. And hopefully you're touching each other, maybe cuddling when you're doing this conversation. That would be even better.
Would be.
at the end of the night. That's question number one. The other two questions are, what are you most grateful for today, sweetheart, whatever. And then the third question is, what are you looking forward to tomorrow? So that is a very simple way to not only update what the Gottmans call love maps, which is our understanding of our partner's internal world, but also to share a bunch of validation, like in a ritualistic way. And that is the point. It comes down to ritual, meaning, and the culture of our relationship. And if we build in a daily ritual of stress-reducing conversation where we're like soothing each other with our validation, then like everybody wins. Everybody's happier. Men are happier in that situation.
Yeah. Yes. And I appreciate you saying what struck me in that is, and you mean it, because
Yes.
I can imagine that a lot of us, and including myself, we love scripts, right? We're like, okay, I'm going to follow this to the T. I'm going to say it exactly like Dr. Greg said it,
Yeah.
and be inauthentic. And that,
Yeah.
I don't know in your experience, but in my experience,
Yeah.
you could tell when someone's just reading a
Faking the
script
fun.
in their mind. Yeah, they're faking it. And they're like, I don't really care, but I'm going to ask these
Yes.
questions. It's
Yes.
the authenticity and being genuine in that dialogue that really comes across.
Yeah.
You can fumble with these questions and that wouldn't really matter. What matters is that you're present and authentic and genuine and that you really care to understand the other person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That starts with intention, I think. Actually, it may seem complicated for us folks who maybe didn't grow up with like knowing how to do this, because maybe like our parent or parents like didn't communicate with us this way when we were stressed out or whatever whatever it is. And that's okay. Or maybe we didn't have guy friends, for instance. Now I've had a guy friend since 7th grade who I've been able to learn that you can actually have these kind of meaningful, deep, emotionally connected, vulnerable, intimate relationships with friends and family, right? And we don't just have to rely on romantic partners for all our emotional needs, gentlemen. Actually, that'll wear them the fuck out. So don't do that.
Wise advice.
Yeah. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, we appreciate it because it then leads me into this question about, so what can men do then, since it seems like dating apps are the future and the now of how people are connecting with each other, especially through social media platforms and otherwise. What can men do to improve their chances of connecting with someone and to improve their dating game, so to speak? I hate calling it a game, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's a numbers game.
uh,
That it is, like statistical numbers game. So the first thing I'm going to say is just like for anybody who's out there single, I've been single for a minute. You know what I mean? By the way, just so your audience understands, I am a board certified couple and family psychologist. I'm an expert in the field of couples therapy. I've been married, divorced, I'm single and dating right now. We all go through our own experience in life, and we should, in every instance, start from a place of self-love and self-worth, right? When we come from a place like that, we start to date, then we can just be ourselves, number one. We can be less anxious. If we're like, okay, if I want someone, like, for instance, I would like someone to marry eventually, okay, and have children with. So If I want that, then let me not show up to my first date thinking I have to accomplish something. Let me show up in an initial message on a dating app, right? Or an initial phone call or initial date or whatever. Let me think about this as an opportunity to be myself and show up as myself, because I want someone to fall in love with me as I actually am. And so hopefully that takes a little pressure off anyone who's dating right now, just to say like, okay, first of all, be myself. Second of all, if I don't have any game, go see someone like Dr. Greg for therapy, or someone like you, or just actually reach out to a friend.
Yeah.
So the biggest hurdle that men have, because I am a man and I studied masculinity for my doctoral research, the biggest hurdle we have is this vulnerability thing, and it sucks. And it's ridiculous, actually. It's fucking ridiculous, gentlemen. When we look at ourselves and we think like a sergeant in the Marine Corps and follow the fourth leadership principle, which suggests that we always seek self-improvement, then we could do nothing but grow in our ability in these soft skills. So let me give something very concrete, okay? If you're a man, don't go on Bumble. You're going to take, I don't know if there's any men who have success in Bumble. I would say if you're a middle-aged man, go on Hinge. If you're a younger man, go on Tinder. There are many apps that you can go on. They all function differently. Let me give a very concrete soft skill though. We're talking about an initial contact with somebody. And if you're not walking up to somebody at the bar, if you're not, right? It's not traditional anymore. It literally is, if you're not like super, hot, attract, a 10 out of 10, whatever. Even if you are, it doesn't matter actually, by the way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're super hot. You gotta have to be able to actually emotionally connect with a woman. I'm talking about heterosexual relationships right now, because I know that's right. Very quickly. Because of two things. Not only is there a lot of fucking people, but there are a lot of men who are making that attempt. And what is happening is that women are becoming overwhelmed very quickly. They're adopting what in the research I'm reading about is called reject mindset. And all of a sudden it's like, nah. So you better really pull it off in the first impression. That's all I'm saying. And you can
That's a lot of pressure.
I know. But on Hinge, let me give a very specific example. Hinge, hopefully you can sponsor either Dr. Susie or me at some point. But on Hinge, for instance, think about the prompts, right? There are prompts that go with your pictures of videos on Hinge. Actually think about the prompt. If a woman or a man, if you're reaching out to me, or it's on Hinge, I'm on Hinge, then actually think about the prompt and try to be a little clever, maybe. And actually say something like, I don't know, I wish I had a very specific example right now, but use maybe an emoji with the hearts and something clever and witty. That's all I'm saying. You can't just like a picture. And these small details matter if you're dating right now.
Right. So putting in a little bit of that extra effort to be more intentional, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly.
When trying to make these connections, because it sounds like that really does come across as very meaningful, in those
absolutely
quick engagements. And that does sound like so much pressure, just so much pressure, right? Like, and so if a guy's struggling with being themselves, for example, you had mentioned like be yourself.
Yeah.
But that can be really challenging for anyone, not just men.
All of us.
Me.
It's hard for me.
Right. It's hard for me too. Like, what does that mean to be myself? And especially if I'm dealing with chronic illness or sexual pain or sexual dysfunction.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? How do we navigate that context and those spaces within experiences?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is non-anxiety. You know what I mean? And you know this because you're a certified sex educator. Is that correct?
Counselor and educator. Yeah.
Counselor and educator. Cheers to you. Listen, folks, if you can meet somebody like Dr. Susie, please do, because it really is, if I may, just take a second to say this. It really is difficult to connect with providers who actually took the time to get certified to understand what it is that they're communicating to you. So she's trustworthy in my book.
What
was the question? Oh yeah, but okay, non-anxiety. Let me get to that point. as men, we often see, let me say things that you probably have said a million times on the show. I apologize in advance if your listeners have already heard you say this, but as men, we do a couple of things. First of all, we suck at vulnerability, which is the thing you need the most for an immersive sexual experience, especially if your attention and focus is going to your body or pain or and anxiety, concerned about whatever, right? The response of our partner and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody has ever tried to have sex when you're in your head, it's not going to be as pleasurable or as immersive or as fun as if you're just in the moment and present and all those things. And that takes, I would say, work beforehand.
Mm.
And so if you've started, I'm going to imagine one of your audience members and let's say that person's actually in a relationship, right? So they're actually like, they've already done the legwork. I hope, my friends, that you've done the legwork to build an emotional connection with your partner where you feel safe with them and that you're in a secure attachment and that everything's going to be okay and all these things. I'm not talking about the pressure situation of dating. So I don't know. I don't have a solution for you. But down the line,
complex.
maybe. Yeah. I don't have a solution for that. But down the line, if you actually are in a relationship with somebody, I think the point of this is going back to, what does it mean to be myself in this moment?
Mm.
It's to recognize that my body is always changing. So regardless if I have chronic like pelvic pain or anything else, my body is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have compassion for my body and whatever it's doing. And especially if it's chronic, it's not going to go away, especially if that's the case. And I have to invest in a kindness to myself, but also a non-anxiety to see that sex is not performative. Although that was the second point, by the way. Men, vulnerability issue, performance issue. Like, what the fuck? When did sex become a performance? Did we think we were filming a porn? Like,
right.
Like what is going on? Sex is actually, if I can make a cultural statement here about a cultural viewpoint, that sex, we have been limited by our view of sex for so long, and it's especially important for people who have these little unique variables to their sexual experience, like pain. But here's the deal, folks. Why don't we just see it as a way to actually emotionally connect in a routine, ritualistic way with our partner versus some kind of fucking performance versus, how many times a week do I want to orgasm? Like, let's actually think about it as a way of like routinely, by the way. And I have all my clients have sex as much as they want, because it has to, like, it's part of the deal. It's part of a fierce, healthy love. Unless you're asexual, it's all good if you're asexual, but otherwise it's part of a healthy, passionate love. So my advice is what you've probably shared with your audience often, which is no performance, take the fucking performance out of it. Get your physiological arousal down way before and work on your emotional connection outside of the bedroom or wherever you like to have sex.
Exactly. Because so often it's very mechanistic as far as sexual performance, for penis owners, particularly as far as, there's a performance, there's a mechanical part to this, these theatrics, and this is my role. And often that is dictating their sexual identity of whether or not or how their penis functions or looks or appears. And it really does rob someone from their absorbing in their experience of pleasure.
Pleasure is what it's, really, like, if you want to meet somebody, what's the end game? It's like, let's have some kind of maybe soul bond or connection, right? So like a meaningful connection, but with somebody that you want to have pleasurable existence with, including sexual intimacy and all those things, for sure.
Absolutely.
I agree 1,000%.
Thank you, Dr. Greg. That was really just so enlightening and also hopeful as far as, the listeners and viewers who are with us, watching this episode, is that what I'm hearing is that there's all this unnecessary expectation and pressure that is placed, certainly with negative messaging, relational messaging, sexual messaging, and these narratives that we often follow and implicit rules that we have for ourselves that create so much friction when it's not working out the way we think according to these internal dialogues and rules and all that jazz. That's where all the stress, right, then comes
Yeah,
from, right? Yeah, which physiologically impacts your chemistry, your biological chemistry, and sexual functioning and experience of pleasure and pain, to for that matter. Because if there's a
that's true.
threat,
Hmm.
anytime there's more of a threat than safety, or you're not feeling like you can trust your partner or that your partner has your back no matter what,
You know,
then
right?
that dials up all these protective systems, including feelings, right? Emotions
Yeah.
like anxiety and fear and frustration and avoidance and all of that. So safety cues, safety cues, safety cues. I say that very
What are the
often.
safety? Wait, what are the safety cues, Dr. Susie?
Well, one of
Tell
them
it.
being like
Yeah.
trust,
Oh yeah.
trusting.
Yes.
Trust, can you trust your partner? Can you trust your partner enough that if you're struggling with something mentally,
Uh-huh.
physically, that you can turn to them as a friend,
Yes. Turn to them. Turn to them, please.
to them,
Yes. Yes.
and not feel like you have to navigate something alone. Often
Who
you
wants to
can't.
do that? Who wants to do it?
Exactly.
Your clients actually want. I don't think our clients actually want to do that, but they do get stuck in this
They do.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
These stories about what they're allowed to do or talk about or whatever.
Or with whom, or or being afraid of being found out, that
Yeah.
they quote unquote are broken, or there's something wrong, especially if there's sexual difficulty,
Yeah.
unpredictability, sexual pain. Yeah, it's can be very challenging and complex experiences to navigate, especially as you're saying, Dr. Greg, these communication skills, these skills to lean into vulnerability, to use vulnerability as a strength and not a weakness, has not been taught, or rather, these messages are not as prevalent
Uh-huh.
in our society, except for when we're talking about it now, right? We're
Yes,
doing it. We're
exactly.
doing the
We're
work.
doing it. Yes, we are. We are. Absolutely. Wait, can I share a really quick
Yes.
tool called Gentle Startup? It's called Gentle Startup or Soften Startup. And I think it gets at a little bit of what you're talking about. It's like, how do you bring up something? Because at the end of the day, we want to be with somebody, right? That we can feel that we trust. Like, okay, we got this issue. So bring something up. Here it is. Here's a formula. Let me give you a formula. And I don't care if you actually sound like a robot when you do it the first time. As long by like the 20th time you do this, it's improvisational. That usually that's what I tell my clients. Use the formula until it becomes improvisational. But here it is. I feel about, I need, want, or prefer. I feel about, I need, want, prefer. Uh, I feel sad that I didn't get a hug this morning. I want a hug now. Can I have it? Yes, you get the hug. So what's the element of that is you start with I feel, and that primes our partner's mirror neurons to get clicked into whatever our emotional experience is. And then we want to actually use our face, gentlemen. Okay, we want to move our face in a way that expresses some kind of emotion. And if it's sadness, we can make sad faces. Whatever, right? We want to feel comfortable expressing so that our partner, we can practice and then we can, right? And we say, I feel sad. Okay, cute end about something specific, the hug, and I need a positive need. What is it that you're looking for? And that's really all we want to do, communicate what our needs are. Hug. Oh, good. Then our partner can just give it to us. So I need to have a conversation about something that's going on with our sexual experience. I need to, whatever it is, whatever that bit is, to open up a conversation to make sure that you're not alone, like you said, Dr. Susie, with any experience in a healthy, fierce love.
Mm. Words of wisdom right there, and so appreciate the practical strategies. Really, this show is packed with that. How do you improve your skills, your communication skills, your relational skills? This is it, folks. It's putting these strategies into practice, and it's certainly going to be challenging. It's not easy, right, Dr. Greg, to if
No,
you've never had practice, or
not easy at all. And it's okay. And we're learning. And it's not like maybe it's a strong thing to say a deficit. It's a clinical term we use in the field. But, at the end of the day, it's an opportunity
Mhm.
to grow and to live our lives more fully because we're only here for a little bit.
That's right. That's so true. Right. Be intentional, be in the moment, make every moment count, and let it be meaningful. Thank you, Dr. Greg. This was really inspirational. I so appreciate you being on the show. If our listeners and viewers wanted to connect with you, tell us about where we can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Your listeners can go check us out at abetterloveproject.org, or they can find us on TikTok and Instagram and everywhere else at abetterloveproject.org. That's my 501c3 charity. We're helping people love each other more fiercely. Yeah.
Let's do it. Love. Thank you, Dr. Greg. And
Thank
to
you so much.
all our listeners and viewers out there, thank you for being here with us. As always, in loving wellness for your pelvis, this is Dr. Susie G. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to visit my website, drsuzieg.com, for show notes and related resources on today's topic. If you like what you're hearing, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. On my YouTube channel, you'll find content related to sex, pelvic health, and expert interviews for men. If you got a question or a topic that you'd like me to answer on my channel, be sure to type it in the comment box below.